Hey, it's Kerry from Total, and we have got an amazing guest in today. We have got Rich Smith from Keltbury. All right, Rich, how are you doing?
Very good, lovely to be here.
Good, thank you for coming down.
No, you're very welcome.
Now, there was something that caught my attention and quite a few other people's attention to why we wanted to interview you today. Now, I have here this book, When I Grow Up.
You do indeed.
So, you are the author of this, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, which is odd. I don't think I ever envisaged being a book author.
Tell us a bit more about that then before we get onto the book. So how did it come to light?
Yeah, so I think it was a bit of a combination of factors really. I think I sort of landed in the construction industry, which I think is where it began for me really. It wasn't an industry I'd ever considered, been encouraged into. I'm not a kind of engineer or anything by background, but loved the industry and felt really quite passionate about the industry. I'm a dad. I've got 2 young children, so Harry and Isabel, who are 8 and 5 now, and I'm chair of governors at their school, so kind of quite involved in, you know, obviously part of bringing them up. You read a lot, you do a lot with them at home, but then quite involved at school as well and see quite a lot of the education side. And I think for me there just seemed to be this big gap that construction and engineering just wasn't being encouraged. It wasn't an industry that kids were really being encouraged into, and the rewards and benefits of the industry weren't really shared. So did a lot more research into that, and I think what I found was school leavers was a big target, awful lot going into that, but the consensus was that was probably a bit late.
Yeah.
You know, by that stage people have kind of, they're quite well formed and they sort of know where they're going and what they're doing, and they've already made some decisions that ultimately have already steered them. So school leavers was great, and then that had worked back a little bit, and through secondary school organisations and, you know, people like the STEM hubs were doing an awful lot more. That had then crept back into kind of Key Stage 2. But for me there just seemed to be this gap at kind of early years of school and Key Stage 1 that really the industry and the disciplines just didn't seem to be getting much coverage. And it seemed a real shame because actually when you look preschool, there's actually quite a lot. You know, like Bob the Builder and the like, you know, funny as it sounds, are actually quite good at promoting the industry and promoting what's out there. So I think it was just a combination of all of those things that made me want to kind of try and address it and try and find something to fit that gap. I had to do quite a bit of research into kids' books. Obviously, I'd read a lot, but
how many books?
Well, I mean, God knows how many I'd read. You know, try and read with the kids every night, as most parents do. So yeah, you must have read hundreds and hundreds. But it was only when I thought, right, let's have a look at it, and had a chat with Hannah, my other half, and we sort of got to a point of thinking, right, you know, we could give this a go. So sat down and researched it, and you know, I suppose once you sort of find a bit of a formula and you look online and it sort of, you know, talks you through, you know, you need to introduce your characters, you need to identify the problem, fix the problem, happy ending. That's your kind of fairly set format for a kid's book. So we then started playing around with, you know, how we could ultimately get a plot that, you know, defined and mapped out what we wanted. And then, yeah, ultimately kind of found ourselves with a story, you know, the When I Grew Up story as we know it now. And I worked with a local illustrator and graphic designer that I'd used in work, if you like, and for more of my day job stuff, my tender stuff, my marketing stuff. And actually worked with Stuart, and Stuart illustrated the book, which, you know, obviously really brings it to life. But yeah, it was kind of strange, one of those funny projects that you never envisage coming, really. But no, it's taken off and it's going really, really well.
So where are you up to at the moment with this journey, the book and the journey? Yeah.
So we relaunched the book in November of 2022. So that came out then, really big sort of spike of interest early. LinkedIn is my kind of one and only marketing tool for it, really. And ultimately seems to be all we need. You know, a combination of that and word of mouth is kind of getting us exactly where we want to be. So launched it then, really big initial interest. So obviously in my role at Keltbray, spoke to the social value teams there. They were mad keen, so they went in with a big early order. We got Murphy's in early, we got a company called Kilnbridge in early, so they've all ordered their own copies for them to use. So it's going really, really well. I think we've printed over about 15,000 copies now. So, you know, going really, really well, huge numbers of requests. We've got it numerous countries around the world now, which again is, you know, just bizarre really to think it's gone there. So really pushing it, doing a lot of work with the STEM hubs at the minute and getting them to a point where all of their volunteers are kind of armed and are taking that into schools. And I suppose excitingly, what we've got coming up is a second book ready for World Book Day, which is on the 2nd of March.
So that's coming up really soon.
So that's coming up really soon. So we're just in the kind of illustration phase at the moment. But yeah, looking to just, I suppose, capture all of the momentum from the first book. And we've got this community now of people with that shared interest of inspiring children into the industry. And I really want to make the most of that and not make it one of those things that we don't feel we quite took far enough. So hopefully the second book will kind of really help us reinforce that.
Good. So I want to speak to you about the children and the age that they're at, the ones that are kind of prime readers for the book. Now, I suppose children are influenced by things they watch on TV, things that they read, things that grown-ups do. And this all conditions the child to what they might want to do when they grow up.
Yep.
So what other forms, what have they got available to encourage them into construction? There's not much, is there?
No, there's not. And I think that's exactly where we end, you know, where this started, I suppose, really. And I think as the children get older, you know, social media comes in a lot, and I think, you know, there's some really, really inspiring things happening on there at the minute, but really from an age group perspective, they need to be a bit older to access that. But, you know, I think if you look at the work, say, Daniel's doing down at Asheville, his channel's going absolutely berserk. There's a number of TikTok channels now doing really, really well. But I think for me, it was how do we engage earlier? So, you know, key stage 1, so we're talking roughly age 4 to age 7. But equally, we've had success in nurseries, so kind of going pre-4. We've had success post 7. So children at kind of lower end of key stage 2. And it's also been really well received by the SEND community of kind of all ages. So we've got the book, which is great. We've also animated the book. So that's available online. And, you know, probably a good point to say, the whole principle of the whole project is all free. So no school, no child, no STEM hub, anyone will ever pay for the resource. The animation's free. And the animation, I suppose, picking up on your point really about the different ways children can access it. You know, for some children, the book's not right. It's not the right resource for them. And actually that animation of, you know, exactly the same story, just narrated with a few moving parts on the screen as, you know, something digital, is a lot more accessible for certain children. So we're finding, you know, that's really useful. And then what we're sort of planning at the moment, following book 2, is what other resources we can introduce, maybe more in the kind of digital space to kind of take children from hopefully discovering the book between 4 and 7, sticking with it through that age group, really getting familiar with it. How do we then take them from, you know, 7 to 10? How do we then take them from 10 to 13, 13 to 16, and ultimately kind of, you know, if you take that example child who came in and first read the book at 4, what have we then offered them through their age? Sort of time in school, but also time outside of school as well, because I think that's quite important, that how do we get it into their home life? And I think that's where the book, you know, comes in quite nicely. You know, one of the nice angles we've had is we've had a lot of people who are really interested in having a copy just to read with their own children, or children in their family, or children in their friendship group, because they're finding it a really useful way of putting across what they actually do for a living. I think we've come across a lot of people who sort of go out to work, come home, and don't join those two worlds together very often with their kids. And the book, we've had some really, really nice feedback that the book's actually helped people to do that and explain what it means when mum or dad go to work.
I suppose it's good to explain to the children as well, if they work in construction, what it is they actually do, because the book kind of tells the story of other job roles that you can have when you grow up, but to have these job roles, the construction process happens before the job role is available.
Yeah, that's it. Book one is certainly just trying to sort of reinforce that message that actually without the industry, very little could exist. Houses we live in, buildings we work in, roads we travel on, pretty much anything. And this is the beauty of the school engagements that we're doing at the minute around book one, is it's really just playing on, picking a child, getting a volunteer and just walking them through their morning. Where did you wake up? Oh, okay, well, construction built your house. And did you brush your teeth? Yeah, you brushed your teeth. Okay, so you needed to turn your tap on. Did water come out your tap? Okay, so where did that water come from? The industry has got water to your house. You flicked the light switch on. You travelled on the road to school. All of these things just underpinning the industry. And then I haven't actually talked about this publicly, so this is a bit of an exclusive, really. But book two will focus more on what individual roles there are within the industry. So it will play more on, you can be quite into the arts and quite creative, but still find a role in the industry. It's not about building. Not everybody builds. I've never built anything in my life. I don't do DIY at home. That's just not who I am and what I do, but I've got a role in the industry. And that's what book two will start to introduce for the children, really.
That's interesting. It's good, that, isn't it? Because it's given them so much insight to what they could potentially be and the things that they enjoy doing, being creative.
Yeah, exactly.
Designing can all be incorporated into the industry, because the construction industry, it is in need of more people, isn't it?
Majorly, it's a massively ageing industry. There's an awful lot closer to retirement than there are coming in at the bottom end.
Exactly.
And I think that's, don't get me wrong, this doesn't address that tomorrow because the kids we're targeting are so young, but actually it's nice to think that in time it really will address it, and hopefully we will have, a lot more children who are preparing themselves for the industry and making choices as they go through school, that actually this is the industry they want to work in and this is their end game, this is where they want to get to. It'd
be a really good exercise to ask children what they want to be when they grow up, let them read the book, and then ask them again, just to see if it's changed.
Yeah, and I think, this kind of network, and I mentioned this earlier, this community of people who've just really bought into the book and are running with it themselves and are off doing their own school engagements and, really just pick the resource up and running with it. And I think actually if you think about that nationally and indeed internationally as it is now, the number of children who are reading that story repeatedly is absolutely massive, and we would only need a small percentage of them to kind of have that sort of light bulb moment of actually maybe that's an industry for me. And they develop that over the years, and I like to think it really will have an impact in years to come.
Hopefully, I think it will do it, and that child will mention it to their friend, they'll mention it to somebody else, and then that's where it kind of kicks off.
Absolutely.
Rather than everyone wanting to be a footballer or a doctor or whatever.
And, that's the thing. So we go into schools now with the book, and we run through that exercise. We take some what do you want to be, and you get the footballers, you get the vets, you get the YouTubers now, which is kind of a new one. Lots of budding YouTubers out there. But actually, even if it's not the child you're talking to, it might be somebody else in the class that really picks up on your explanation of, well, actually, there's an industry here that is enabling literally every role that's being talked about around them. It's going really well, and there's definitely a lot of interest. And it ties in really nicely, the curriculum is getting a lot better in STEM subjects.
Should we talk about STEM, actually?
Yeah, sure.
It's the word that keeps coming up. So let me try and say what it stands for, all right? Because I'm not in that industry. So science, technology, engineering and maths.
Yeah, perfect.
Got it.
Nailed it.
All right.
Nailed it.
So tell us a bit about that, how it's been incorporated.
Yeah, so I think it's a set of subjects and disciplines, really, that, have perhaps been a bit neglected and not encouraged, and certainly there's a big piece around girls and, you know, ultimately women in STEM careers and in that space. And I think that's something, again, that we've looked to address with the book. And I think you can't address everything in, you know, something as simple as a children's book, but actually we are trying to break some of that down. You know, so we do have girls that play big roles in the book, and certainly in book 2 we'll see more of that. But really it's just trying to, I suppose, shine a light and put those disciplines and subjects on a bit of a pedestal and actually give kids the opportunity to think it's cool, you know, because that's like really a thing. When, you know, if you're 4 to 7, you want to be cool and you want to be doing things that are cool. And actually we're trying to put all of those STEM subjects and areas into that space for children and actually make it something that they're kind of proud of being interested in. And, you know, I think that's where we want to get to. We want to try and create that love for these subjects, because ultimately that's what, you know, if I think back to my own childhood, they're the things that you stick with, and they're the things that you try hardest in. They're the areas that you've built that kind of love for, really. So hopefully we sort of start them off in those STEM areas. And what's been great for us is, you know, there's a massive support network and volunteer network out there in the STEM area now. So, you know, people all over the country by their thousands giving up their time to go and try and inspire children into STEM subjects. So, you know, when I look at that part of the industry, ultimately what I'm trying to do with the book is just provide a resource for all those people to go and use. You know, they're fantastic individuals. They might be engineers, they might be scientists, you know, they could be anywhere in that space, but actually hopefully the book just gives them a bit of an in and saves them a bit of time in preparing a school visit, and is something they can just, you know, pick up off the shelf and take with them and go and inspire children, really.
Now, you mentioned before that some quite big companies have got involved in terms of, have they purchased some of these books?
Yeah,
Did you mention Murphy's?
So Murphy's one of the first to jump on it, and I think, I suppose, maybe a bit interesting from a kind of marketing type insight, but there's no branding in the book anywhere or on the website or in the animations. So, you know, Keltbray have bought into the project in the sense that they're using it for their social value and they're using it to deliver that social value in schools.
So how are they doing that? What are they doing?
Yeah, so basically what Keltbray and other organisations like Murphy's I've mentioned have done is they've bought their own copies of the book direct from the printer. So it doesn't involve me, it doesn't involve anyone else. They go direct to the printer, buy their own copies, and then they're distributing them to their own employees for them to take home and talk about. A lot of the industry now have got teams within their organisation who literally exist to deliver social value. So they're out there talking to local stakeholders, they're talking to schools, Brownies, Cubs, you know, whoever it might be in the area they're working in. And then they're going and delivering meaningful engagement. So they're going into school and explaining about the industry. And I think that's where the book's found a bit of a niche, that rather than them needing to plan those engagements and put a lot of time and effort in up front, the book's just there now. So actually they can buy the book, plug that straight into their own existing social value teams and, you know, those delivering that engagement, and they can run with it straight away. So yeah, we've got, you know, fantastic interest, and I think it's really pleased me that I think as an industry we're not that great at collaborating. That's the reality. You know, it's hard when you compete with somebody 9 times out of 10 to suddenly then drop that all together and all be kind of in it together and all fighting for the same cause. I think, you know, it just doesn't come naturally. Whereas I think what we've seen with the book, which as I say is kind of massively rewarding, is that because there's no branding in it and it's not connected to any one company, everyone's been able to say, actually, do you know what, I'd really like to get involved in that, and I don't mind that it maybe didn't originate in our company, or we weren't the first people on it, or, you know, everyone's kind of put that to one side and said, actually, there's a massive greater good piece here and we want to be part of that. And they've really, really run with it. And, you know, I'm spending a lot of my week at the minute just having conversations with other organisations who want to get involved, and that's exactly where we want it.
That's great, because if you look at news releases, press releases from companies such as Morgan Sindall, Robert McAlpine, John Saiskes, they're always promoting when they've worked with children or with college students. So this gives them something to incorporate into what they're already doing or to kind of start a new venture.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's, you know, that's the big aim really, that the resource now exists. It's not tied to any other business. So literally anybody can get in touch and can pick it up and start working with it straight away. There's no, like, it sounds crazy, but people assume there's going to be some sort of like contract that they need to sign up to and get involved. Like, there's literally nothing. There's no paperwork, there's no anything. People can just get involved straight away from the off. And it's broken down a lot of barriers. And I think, you know, certainly for me, if I look at my personal network, that's grown massively through this, with people that ultimately I could have competed alongside for 10, 20 years and never spoken to, you know, just because that's often just how the industry is. So no, it's been really good for that, really good.
All right, so your second book's coming out March?
Yeah, 2nd of March is World Book Day, so we're targeting that to launch book number 2.
And how many are we expected to see in the series? Are we allowed to know if you've got anything else in the pipeline?
Do you know what? I'd love to keep it going. I suppose my own personal insecurity is that I'm going to run out of like writing ability and ideas. But no, it'd be really nice to kind of keep taking it. I think maybe exploring some of the roles in a bit more depth might be a really nice angle, because that'll, you know, really give the children that opportunity to engage a bit longer with what some of those roles are and build a bit more understanding about them. There's certain pockets in the industry that have expressed a real interest in being explored a bit more. So, you know, traffic management is an area that I've had a few conversations around it recently. So hopefully it's book 2 of many.
I think it will
be.
but
nothing there just yet.
So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, wait and see on that one, definitely.
Are the characters based on anybody?
Well, so in terms of the characters, so my children are Harry and Isabel. The sort of main characters when I grew up are Harry and Amy. Amy is my niece. Isabel, as my daughter, has too many syllables to fit nicely with Harry. It's as simple as that. So I suppose the inspiration for them kind of started there. But then, you know, we've got a real wealth of characters across the book, and I think it just comes from, I suppose the inspiration for them comes from all sorts of places, really. It's, you know, either children I've seen at school, maybe some of Harry and Isabel's friends, people they play sport with. I think you kind of take little bits, don't you, from different people that you see, and I think a lot of the characters have kind of come from a number of different children that have kind of then merged into one to become a character. So it is nice, because I sort of see that when I read the book with kids in school, and I think what's really nice is you see the children trying to relate to a character, and they're almost trying to pick one who's kind of their character, and that's who they see themselves as. And I think that's a learning from the first book that I've really tried to bring out in the second book, that actually that'll give them even more opportunity to kind of relate to one of the characters in particular, and really sort of pick the person that's like their hero, really. And we're sort of playing on that hero type status. I think with the second book we really want to get to the point where actually children are kind of picking a book character as the person they want to be. You know, that's where we want to get to.
And if there's anybody watching this, or any contractors that are thinking that it'd be really good to roll out for the schemes that we're doing this year, how do they get in touch, or how do they purchase them? What's the next step for them?
Yeah, so we've got a website, which is whenigrowupbook.co.uk, so they can go on there. All the project information is on there. All the contact information is on there. I spend an increasing amount of my life on LinkedIn, so they will always be able to find me on LinkedIn. So yeah, a number of ways to get involved. And then if it's something that people want to take forward from a business perspective and they want to order their own copies, either get in touch via the website, get in touch with me, and I'll put them directly in touch with the printer, and then they're off to order their own copies and run with it from there.
And the animation it's kind of telling the story, isn't it? Animation style, that's online, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all online. So it's on YouTube, it's on the website. That literally is the same story narrated with a little bit of animation just to bring it to life on the screen a bit. What's nice about that actually, which, interested me, we did it primarily to cover children where book wasn't the right answer. But actually what we found, the biggest use of the animation is when people go into a school to try and, inspire the children, rather than them read the book, they're preferring to play the video and then talk about it. And it's really serving as a tool to make it easier for people to use, which I'll be perfectly honest, wasn't the intention at all. That wasn't how I sort of saw it playing out. But actually it's working really, really well for that. So there will be an animation coming for book 2 as well, just to kind of continue that theme.
Yeah, it's good that people are very visual these days, aren't they?
Well, that's it, and I think, for a lot of the children, certainly 4 to 7, as you start getting towards the top end of that, a lot of them have more than discovered YouTube and are very familiar with YouTube and videos and how that works, and they find it quite an easy thing to engage with. So, the book, it's quite immersive for them. If they're sat with somebody reading to them, that's great, but they do get a lot of that at school. Naturally there is a lot of kind of listening to the teacher or listening to the adult at the front, and I think what the animation and the video does is just gives them that slightly different perspective, and it can just be that bit easier to engage with sometimes.
Right, let's talk about you then. Okay,
Yeah.
So you're from construction,
Yeah.
but you mentioned earlier on in the interview that it wasn't the area you was looking to get into. Will you tell me your story about what you kind of did growing up, the first kind of jobs you had, and how you've ended up here today?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the northeast. I grew up in Sunderland. I left Sunderland at 18 to go to Loughborough Uni, and I didn't know what I wanted to do even at that point, really. So I kind of picked subjects that I was sort of solid in, and I knew I'd be okay. So I did kind of IT and business type, quite a generic type degree really at Loughborough, and I think that just kept my options open for a bit longer, that I didn't need to pick at that point. I then went into the kind of world of IT after I graduated, and consultancy, which was great. I think I picked up a lot of kind of people skills and the big wide world in that role, which was really useful. But I then took an IT job at Aggregate Industries, which was kind of when I found the industry. And being perfectly honest, I didn't take it because of the industry. I took it because of the job itself.
Yeah.
The job in IT was great. So that was a really interesting job. I ran their service desk, so supporting all of their sites, which was brilliant for me. I'd gone from this kind of corporate IT consultancy world to suddenly running the service desk who were supporting quarries and asphalt plants and concrete plants, and it was a whole sort of new world to me, really. And then there was an opportunity to sort of combine both of those skill sets that I had, I suppose, really. So I worked in their contracting business, who lay roads, and they do a lot of the road works that are out there, and we rolled out a mobile workforce solution, so basically putting tablets out into the field and getting the guys and girls on site to use those tablets. So that was really, I suppose, using my IT background, but more in a actual business sense in the industry. And then I think it's all just come down to networking, really, that I met some people in there, started to then look more into the sales and business development side, then discovered this whole world of tendering that I had no idea existed. So this concept that the client will put a job out for tender, organisations will then bid for that work, not just on time and price, but also on quality. So an awful lot goes into submitting to the client how we'll deliver it and what we will do, talking about things like school engagement as part of, if you select us to deliver this work, we will visit these 4 local schools, we'll take the booking, we'll talk to them, so all of that added value that you bring. So I discovered that world and kind of moved across then really into where I am now in that business development, pre-construction type world. So yeah, it's kind of quite interesting to look back really and think, you know, how did I end up where I am in this industry? And as I say, I suppose that's a lot of the motivation for the book really, that actually if someone could have explained to me and shown me how much the industry offered, I think I would have found it a lot earlier. You know, not that I kind of regret the way I did it, but it would have been nice, I think, to have known that was where I was aiming for.
I'm glad you did it the way that you did it, otherwise you wouldn't have done the book.
Well, no, that's it. It has worked well in that sense. But I think, yeah, you know, and don't get me wrong, everyone's totally different, and, you know, no two people follow exactly the same path, do they? But I think just opening more children's minds to the industry and showing them that it's there gives us as an industry the best chance of, you know, bringing the best talent into the industry. Because I think certainly as I went through school, it was an industry that high achievers weren't pushed towards. It was more a fallback option, to be honest, for people that, you know, weren't going to make it in an industry that they wanted to make it in. And, you know, a lot of the academic system was pushing law and medicine and, you know, stick with English, you'll never go far wrong if you do that. And it was more, if none of those are going to work for you and you're not up to any of them, maybe have a look for a trade, maybe see if there's something you could do. And, you know, so I just think breaking that down and moving away from that is what we need to do, and starting children as early as possible.
You're right, and to show people the scope of what's available, because it's massive.
Well, that's the thing, and, you know, I think not even just children, but if you say to anyone the construction industry, they automatically think
tools,
high-vis jackets, tools,
get your
working outside in the rain, in the cold. And don't get me wrong, some of the industry is that, but actually there's just this breadth of roles there that isn't like that at all. You know, I've never worked a day on site where I've actually been expected to produce or output anything, and I never will. You know, so I'll go through my entire career in the industry and that'll never be an expectation. And I think just trying to explain that and get that across is really, really important.
I agree on that topic. Now, you're a pre-construction director currently, aren't you, at Keltbray?
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis, what your role entails?
Yeah, sure. So the team, the pre-construction team, we basically look after everything before we go into contract with a client. So it starts off really early in that kind of business development type phase. So we're out there monitoring what projects are coming up. We might be looking at planning permissions that are being granted to see what's out there. There's a whole world of portals online that work is put out through. So a lot of kind of customer facing, out there meeting new customers, new suppliers, just trying to get a feel for what's out there in the industry. And then we sort of boil that down to jobs that we think we actually want to bid for. So we're then trying to position ourselves best for them. So it might be getting to know the client a bit more. It might be getting to know the project a bit more. There might be a certain discipline on that project that we need to go and do some work in. And then all of that work then ultimately culminates really in a sort of tender period, which is normally about 4 to 8 weeks. So the client will issue us with a kind of pack of documents, and they'll say, this is what we're looking for. Any restrictions to it, any additional requirements beyond the obvious construction of whatever it is they're looking for. And we have that sort of 4 to 8 week period then to effectively build the job in the office. So we call in all the different experts, pull them all together into a team, and we work to the timeline of going back to the client at the end with our offer. We work out what price it would be to build the work, how long it would take us to build it, how we'll build it. That's kind of become a really, really big thing that actually clients want to understand a lot more now, how it'll actually take place and what you will do and who you will use. So, you know, there's almost no organisations out there who can deliver 100% of the scope themselves. So, you know, supply chain are absolutely critical to the industry, and clients have really got interested in that and want to understand, okay, well, what will your supply chain look like? What will you be doing yourself? What will you be subcontracting out? Who are they? Have you worked with them before? And I think it's really all about them building more confidence in the submission that you've given them. So we'll work that through for that tender period. There's then often a sort of shortish negotiation period after that, as things move around and we get the contract in place. And then as a pre-construction team, that's the point where we kind of hand over to the operational and commercial teams who are going to take the project forward and build it. So we develop a big detailed handover pack that tries to summarise everything we've done, all the conversations we've had, suppliers we've talked to, and we effectively package that as well as we can to hand over to the teams to go and
executed.
That's it, and then they'll go and execute it. Yeah.
So you were saying just a minute ago that clients are interested in who you're using in terms of supply chain, subcontractors. They're also quite interested in material in terms of the stock that you're using to deliver the project, because everyone's looking at green future and stuff like that. So is that something you get involved with as well? Yeah.
So we have a lot of supply chain engagement at pre-construction stage, because I think what we're finding recently is, through COVID, through all the political landscape and everything that's going on there's been some real areas where material has become a real issue.
Yeah.
Either in availability or in price, and both have affected jobs massively. So we're doing as much work as we can to get as much confidence as we can in what we're doing in what is a relatively short period of time. 4 to 8 weeks isn't long, and you have to really try and immerse yourself in it to ultimately predict what the right answer might be in 12 or 18 months time, depending on the length of the project. So we're very reliant on feedback from the market. So we do a lot of work there, and I think, as you say, it's availability of it, surety on the price, environmental credentials, as you say, often a really big factor. We're sometimes looking for alternatives to some of the traditional specifications that are out there. So we might be looking to improve the carbon efficiency of a job. So, we have to spend, it's one strand of what is that kind of 6-week period where there's an awful lot to do. But certainly, working with supply chain and material suppliers is a massive part of it.
So I had a little scope on Keltbury's website and the projects.
Yeah, sure.
You were involved in the deconstruction blowing up.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. It looks awesome.
Yeah. So I can't take credit in our bit of the business, but I suppose that's the beauty of the industry, really. That there's so many different disciplines in the industry, and Keltbury, as you rightly say, do some amazing demolition and deconstruction jobs, which sometimes it is literally blow it up. That that is the answer.
That's what I saw.
That is the answer. Yeah, the power stations.
Yep.
And sometimes it's a really intricate deconstruction, and they might be working around some of the stuff I find fascinating that the guys and girls have done is working inside a listed exterior, and they're doing demolition and deconstruction inside of it, and you can't affect the listed building that's ultimately around the outside. So, going from one end of blowdowns at power stations like you've seen to central London, really, really intricate listed building deconstruction. So, such a range.
That requires some expertise, doesn't it?
100%. And, the accuracy, like those blowdowns at the power station you saw, the accuracy in terms of how well they can predict how that tower is going to fall and what it's going to look like on the ground when it's fallen, it's like staggering. I can't even begin to understand how you can get to a point where you're predicting what the end demolition will look like to, within a couple of centimetres, and that is literally the accuracy that they're able to get. 99%
of the time it lands exactly where they're saying it's going to land, doesn't it?
And it's like, I just think, how do you even factor that in? Some amazing engineering out there, and I think picking up on that video, these are the kind of things that are interesting to children. You show them that, it's like someone's blown something up. It's just interesting, isn't it? Going back to my point on things being cool, that's cool. You show them that and they're like, oh wow, and they go home and they say, oh, I saw this video today where this happened, and this is really where, coming back to the book, if they see that video and they get that little bit of inspiration from that, and then there's a resource there that can engage them that bit further, it's combining all of these little things that can really spark that bit of imagination in children.
Of course, so if a company has got something going on, we'll use that as an example. If they're decommissioning something,
Yeah.
they could show that to the children, then issue the book and talk about how it's all
Exactly that.
incorporated. Opportunities, they're endless, the
Well,
opportunities.
that's it. And you know, picking up on our earlier point of other organisations, if you imagine that across the industry, you know, literally anyone building anything or demolishing anything can link what they're doing in their business to the book and combine them. And that could be anything. You know, building of schools is a really big one that I'm talking to quite a few organisations at the moment who do a lot of school building. And actually, it'd be really nice for them to build the school, then go into the school with the book and talk to the children about how they built the school they are sat in. And actually the children will be able to look around and think, okay, so this wasn't here before, and they can show them the photos of here's your school being constructed. So yeah, there's, you know, so many nice links and just little bits of inspiration, I think, that we can find across the industry.
I think so. I've learned quite a lot in the interview,
Yeah,
to be
perfect.
honest.
No, it's good. That's what we're aiming for.
So are there any projects that you guys have got on the go that you can briefly speak about? Because you cover all sorts of different industries, don't you?
Yeah, we do. So, you know, certainly Keltbray as a group cover an awful lot of what we term the built environment. So structures, certainly a lot down in the southeast inside the M25. The whole demolition, deconstruction market that we mentioned. The part of the business I sit in is the infrastructure business. So we deal with rail, energy, roads, and it's just such a growth area at the minute. You know, we're heavily involved in the renewable energy sector. So, you know, there's masses of movement and government backing and investment going into renewable energy, be it offshore wind, be it solar energy, be it transfer of energy between countries, which again, you know, your average person in the public has no idea that currently cables are being laid literally between countries to transfer power from one country to another to help deal with peaks and troughs in demand. And obviously the whole, you know, wholesale market for energy. So we've got masses of renewable energy work going on at the moment, which is fantastic. We do an awful lot on the strategic road network in the UK. So some really, really big road schemes that are out there. We've got kind of our place on there and our scope and remit on there. Some of the nice rewarded work we do a lot of regeneration type work. So a lot of town centres, city centres. Active travel has been quite a big topic recently and has had quite a bit of funding attached to it. So we've done a lot of cycleways, a lot of town centre improvements, redevelopments. And, you know, again, coming back to that point of inspiration for children, seeing their town centre go from, you know, old and grey to actually nice benches, lighting, planters, cycle lanes being encouraged, you know, seeing those places transform, I think are really, really engaging. So yeah, huge amounts going on in the infrastructure industry at the minute across, you know, everywhere. The rail industry's obviously got HS2, which, you know, is an absolutely massive project. So yeah, real growth period at the minute for infrastructure, and one that, you know, ultimately for us in pre-construction is really exciting to be a part of. You know, there's an awful lot of projects out there for us to go and look at, and ultimately, you know, bid, win and see built over the coming years. Yeah.
So what do you do when you're not working and you're not writing books?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time with the children, I suppose. So I'm involved with Harry's football team, so I do a lot there. I do the coaching there, so that's good. That takes up quite a bit of time. I've signed up for the Manchester Marathon in April.
Is that a full marathon?
Yeah, the full shebang. Ooh. Yeah, so that'll be the first full marathon I've done. So I've got a lot to do between now and then. Yeah. But yeah, I try and kind of keep busy and keep active and involved with the kids, and, you know, kind of anything outdoorsy, really. I think you spend a lot of time during the week, don't you, in your car or in an office. So yeah, anything that gets me kind of out and about. We've got a dog, so a lot of dog walking, and yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for taking time out of that schedule.
No,
because I know
thank you
you've
for
got a
having
very,
me. No,
very busy one.
It's been really good.
And good luck to the launch of book 2.
Thank you very much.
And I'm hoping you might come back and see us after
we
that
will.
launch.
We will absolutely keep you posted.
Awesome.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your
That's brilliant.
time.
Cheers, Carrie.